All good to go. In a moment, Ros and I will discuss yet more revelations out of central Queensland about the failing health system, but I just wanted to start with some comments about the impending weather that many parts of regional Queensland are experiencing. And I've spent some time on the phone this morning with our local MPs in areas that are impacted, Dale Ast, Amanda Cam, Lachlan Miller, to name a few, as well as some of my contacts in emergency services. There is no doubt that this is wet season rain, and lots of it, and with more to come. And the message to communities is to stay safe and listen to advice. One of the messages that has come through loud and clear has been particularly with people visiting areas who are taking advice from Google Maps and going down roads that are particularly dirt roads that are then flooding, putting themselves at risk. Google Maps is a very good resource, but during weather conditions, the best bit of advice should come from authorities. And the advice is, if you don't have to drive, don't. And certainly don't go down dirt roads with rising creeks. That is a recipe for disaster, and we are urging people to heed the warnings with more rainfall on the horizon. Yet again this morning, more concerns coming out of central Queensland about the failing health system. And it is things that we have prosecuted and asked the government to listen to way back last year when we had a town hall in Gladstone, and we heard some impassioned pleas from young mums, young families, about the impact of the closure of the service. It's been 100 days since the local MP said that he'd resign if it wasn't fixed. It's been 6 months since the hospital went on bypass, and still mums can't give birth in the city where they live. And we're talking about a proud major city in regional Queensland, a city with tens of thousands of people who are forced to play Russian roulette and drive to Rocky to try and have a baby. And with that has come young mums having to give birth on the side of the road. Queenslanders deserve a world-class health system no matter where they live. And part of that involves being able to have a bub in the area you call home. The government said they would fix this failure, and they haven't. And we're asking them to listen, to acknowledge the failing system, and to get on and act. We're a great state, and young mothers deserve the right to give birth where they live. This is a failing of epic proportions. It is putting pressure on people living in Gladstone. It is putting pressure on the Rockhampton Health Service. It's making young mums have to make choices that it's making young mums denied the choice of how and where to have a baby that they shouldn't be denied in a modern era like this. We're asking the government to listen to the solutions on the table, do what you said you were going to do, fix this crisis before more tragedies unfold. Over to you, Ros.
Thank you, David. Ros Bates, Shadow Minister for Health and Ambulance Services and registered nurse. Well, Queenslanders do deserve a world-class health system, particularly those who live in a major regional city. As David just mentioned, it's been 6 months since the Gladstone Hospital has been on bypass for expectant mothers. It's 100 days since the local member and minister said that he would resign if this situation wasn't fixed. What we're seeing today is that mothers in Gladstone have little choice. The only choices they have at the moment is to have a caesarean section, which they may or may not need medically, or run the risk of giving birth on the side of the road. What sort of choice and what sort of state are we now living in? That is what mothers in Gladstone are forced to deal with every day. I said 100 days ago that there would be a rise in caesarean sections at Gladstone, and that is the case. Women deserve the choice, and if their only choices at the moment are to have a caesarean section that is probably unwarranted or to give birth on the side of the road, that is no choice for those mothers. Yvette Darth is a fraud, a phony and a failure, and she should have been sacked months ago. All of these crises in Queensland Health has been when Yvette Darth has been at the helm. And if Anastasia Palaszczuk wasn't checked out and on the red carpet, she would have sacked Yvette Darth months ago.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Ross. Over to you.
Surely if you live in one of these centres, it is a regional centre, you can't expect the same things you get in the capital city.
Good question. We're talking about a city of tens of thousands of people. We're talking about a city that gives so much to our state's economy. We're talking about a city where young mums have been able to give birth for generations there. And surely in the modern era, we shouldn't be pulling services away from major centres. We should be improving them. The electorate of Callide is one of the biggest in the state. There is nowhere where a young mum can give birth in Callide anymore. So this is a similar playbook we saw with Chinchilla, where we were told the hospital was going on a short-term maternity bypass and it didn't come back. And we don't want to see that in Gladstone. There have been commitments made and good governments listen. And it should never have got to this situation. And it shouldn't take a local MP to threaten to resign and then see what's unfolded over the last 100 days. That is an absurdity. We are seeing health services in this state deteriorate because the government is not listening to the solutions on the table. And part of that is proper resourcing, and part of that is putting doctors and nurses back in charge. And if that occurs, well then both Gladstone and Rockhampton should be able to offer places where young mums can give birth whenever they want, in whatever fashion they want. And for two cities of those sizes in a modern Queensland to not have the service available just shows how far we have fallen as a state. And we are better than that. And we're demanding the government to listen to the cries from the local community and get on and fix it.
Do you think Red should step down?
We've been very consistent on that, and I'll get Ros to make some comments about why that should be the case. But I'll make the point. The local MP threatened to resign. Well, that's not going to improve the health system. What's going to improve the health system is to get a minister who can actually do the job, and for a premier to start taking some interest in the job again. And what we're witnessing in Queensland Health is diabolical. And Queensland Health was in crisis long before COVID, and regional communities are continuing to lose the services that matter to them. Do you want to make a point?
Well, the embattled Minister for Health, Yvette D'Arcy, should have stood down months and months ago. We have seen debacle after debacle. We have seen the Mackay Hospital mothers debacle. We have seen the DNA lab debacle. We've seen the Category 1A ambulance arrivals not being seen on time. We're seeing ambulance bypass again. We're seeing ambulance ramping at record levels across this state. And we are seeing local maternity units being closed down one after the other. As David mentioned, Callide, you can't even give birth unless you're either on the side of the road or have to take a mammoth journey either in your own car or via ambulance. And make no mistake, a caesarean section is a major surgery, and it should be available, and it has been available in Gladstone up until 6 months ago. It means that a woman has a drain tube, she's got a drip, she's got a wound, she's probably had a epidural. It's not minor surgery, and it's not something that women who can normally give birth in a normal fashion or would have been able to give birth would choose to do unless they were too frightened that they might end up giving birth on the side of the road. Now that is no choice at all. Yvette D'Arcy has been the embattled health minister who has presided over all of these issues, and she needs to go, and she needs to go today.
Is it a staffing issue?
Well, certainly we know that obstetricians have left Gladstone, and that obstetricians from Rockhampton have been trying to fill a gap. So now they're just sending patients to Rockhampton Hospital. You shouldn't have to actually give birth by appointment, and that's what's happening in Gladstone at the moment. They have had 6 months to attract doctors to that area. It is a major city, so whether they're not looking at proper packaging for doctors because they need to have housing, they need to have work for their family members, they need to have schools. All of those are available in Gladstone. So why on earth are those packages not being offered or they're not being taken up? Is it because that the doctors have no faith in Queensland Health system at the moment, or the minister presiding over all of it?
Some doctors just don't seem to want to move to these areas. I mean, are they being greedy, wanting to stay in big cities and have nice packages?
Well, we know that the current government's spending about $5,000 day or just on locums, flying locums in. So you could certainly, if you spend that much money on a locum, you could put together a package that is attractive for someone who wants to move out of the city. And the regions are great places to work, and more often than not, once a doctor or a nurse or a midwife gets to the areas like Gladstone, they want to stay. It's a great city, it's got a lot to offer. The government just needs to make sure that the packages are attractive enough to get doctors there, and they need to make it a priority. Thanks. Anything else?
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Thanks very much.